Forget New Year, New You. This season is about slowing down, locking the doors, and cozying up at home with the one you really want to do nothing with. Your dog. After the holiday chaos, those quiet nights with a blanket, a podcast, and your pup feel like the reset you actually need. Ollie helps make those moments easier with fresh protein-packed meals made from real human-grade ingredients, so your dog can enjoy some quality comfort food too. Choose from 5 recipes and get a personalized plan for your dog's needs. Meals arrive perfectly proportioned with a scoop and storage container, so serving is fast and mess-free. And with Ollie's in-app on-demand health screenings, supporting your dog is easy, ensuring more cuddles for many years to come. Visit ollie.com/truecrime and use code TRUECRIME for 60% off your first box.
Shortly after 9 a.m. on September 18th, 2015, Corona, California police officer Shannon Velasco spotted a suspect vehicle, a stolen Ford Raptor pickup truck that was wanted in connection with a triple homicide that had occurred in the area the night before. The suspect was listed as younger, in his early 20s, an African-American male adult. Officer Velasco saw the driver through the window and turned on her overhead lights. The vehicle continued on, but eventually came to a stop. She got out and stood behind her door for protection as she waited for additional units to arrive. She yelled at him through her PA system to put his hands outside the window. The driver complied. As soon as backup arrived, they were about to have him get out of the vehicle when he took off.
So at this point, the subject disengaged his, he was no longer complying with your commands. Is that correct?
Yes.
And then you said that the truck left the scene?
Yes.
And will you describe to the jury the manner in which that truck left?
Yes, I remember it leaving at a high rate of speed. That was concerning for me, given we're in a residential community, given the hour. I'm familiar with that area, that there's people that go out, pedestrians, if you will, who walk their dogs, who take their kids for walks. Also, we're in close proximity to an elementary school.
A chase began through the residential area, just a few miles from where the murders occurred the night before. After the driver ran through stop signs, refused to stop, and continued to drive erratically, Officer Velasco and her fellow officers decided to employ pit maneuvers, which is when they try to force a car to turn sideways, causing the driver to lose control and stop. The first 3 attempts were unsuccessful. Officer Velasco was able to make contact with her car and the Raptor, but the driver was able to continue fleeing. At the final attempt, another officer rammed it. The suspect didn't surrender, though. He got out and started running.
So you saw the suspect now, after the Raptor was stopped, run out of the driver's side?
Yes.
And then on foot, obviously.
Yes.
He ran to a nearby home and went up to the second story. The woman who lived in the home was taking a shower when 22-year-old Brandon Willie Martin entered her home. She was not harmed. Brandon continued his escape attempt from the police by jumping out of the second-story window. He was lying on the ground, motionless, when officers released their canine, Dex.
When Dex bit the subject, what happened?
At that point, the dog now was latched onto him. The subject stood up and began fighting with the dog.
And so with both hands, the individual was punching Dex.
Correct.
And did you see anything else happen to Dex?
I saw when it's almost like an old wrestling move where the dog kind of was picked up and then dropped on his top of his head. Like he picked him up and then dropped him on his. That's when we all jumped in.
Brandon Willie Martin, who had once been a top prospect in Major League Baseball, was arrested and charged with 3 counts of murder. This is Jillian, and you are listening to Court Junkie, episode 150. Brandon Willie Martin's childhood was, according to his brother Sean, ideal. The nuclear family consisted of his older brother Sean, Brandon, his mother Melody, and his father Michael. But the extended family was very large. Melody had 14 siblings and Michael had 3. Cousins, aunts, and uncles were permanent fixtures in the Martin household. And according to Sean, he and Brandon were everyone's favorite nephews. Alongside this large, loving family dynamic, Melody and Michael kept Brandon and Sean active in every sport imaginable. His mother Melody played on an adult softball travel league and believed to keep her boys' minds active, they needed sports in their lives. Sean and Brandon played many sports at a young age: basketball, soccer, baseball, and football. Each brother chose which they would concentrate on once they reached middle or high school. Sean focused on football and Brandon on baseball. Sean was 2 years older and in 2009 left to play football on a scholarship for Oregon State University. Brandon and his parents stayed in Corona, California, and focused on his high school baseball career. During his senior year at Santiago High School, Brandon was ranked the number 3 defensive high school shortstop. Sean had hoped his brother would join him at Oregon State when he graduated. But as the accolades continued to flow in for the shortstop, it was clear his path was leading directly to the pros. In 2011, Brandon was one of the top prospects for Major League Baseball. On draft day, the offer came in. He was selected in the first round of the draft by the Tampa Bay Rays. The selection also brought a large signing bonus of $860,000. A large sum for anyone, but especially for a 17-year-old. He officially reported to Florida to begin his professional baseball career in June 2011, playing for the minor league Gulf Coast League Rays. He had a successful minor league season, and later that November, he used some of his bonus money to rent a home, some referred to as a mansion, in Yorba Linda. According to one roommate, they had extravagant parties, which included drugs.
In the off season, you're living with Brandon. Are there other people in the home?
There were other people in the home regularly.
How many people were living there?
Technically living there, it was 3 or 4 of us, but we did have friends that would stay over regularly.
Did you guys throw parties there?
We did.
Hey, tell us about those.
They were rather extravagant at times. We had a lot of people over. Some people were friends that I knew personally. Some people were friends that were, guests of the other people at the house that I would meet through, the interactions and the events that we would have at the house.
And up to that point, Brandon is still the same charismatic, genuine human being that you described?
Absolutely.
And at these parties, were there drugs present?
There would be drugs present at times.
Were you taking drugs at that time?
I was.
Did you see Brandon do that?
I did.
What types of drugs did you see him taking?
We used marijuana and cocaine and alcohol.
By the end of 2012 and 2 seasons in the minor leagues, Brandon's brother Sean and other family members began to notice a change in him.
The first time I ever noticed a change in my brother was when I had like a week break from my, I'd say junior year, before we went and started getting football going. And so he just started living in that Yorba Linda house. And I went to go visit him with my mom right after we got off of the plane at the Long Beach airport. And so when I got there, I saw him, saw a couple of his friends, talked to them, see how things were going, just checking in. Noticed in the house that there was a weight room. And so weight room had clothes and stuff on it. It looked like it wasn't being used. And so I just asked him, hey, what's going on? My mom did too. What's going on? Are you working out? And my brother's never in his life flashed at me, ever. And at that moment, he was just like, what's the issue? What's up? And it was just like the most like defensive thing I've ever seen. And he was at that moment ready to fight me. And it threw me back completely.
According to his family, as time went on, Brandon's behavior became increasingly violent. His mother and brother both recalled holes being punched into walls. Melody Martin would later recall an incident from September 2014, almost exactly a year before the murders. Brandon's father, Michael, was very ill. He only had about 6% of his kidneys functioning, and he couldn't move around or even take himself to the bathroom. He only left his chair in the living room with help from a medical professional or to attend a dialysis appointment. But that day in September 2014, Brandon hit his father while he sat in his chair.
To your knowledge, was this provoked at all? Did Michael provoke him at all? Or
No, Michael was ambulatory. So Michael couldn't get around. He couldn't go to the bathroom on his own. He couldn't take a shower on his own. He couldn't get up and walk on his own. Michael sat in that recliner, all day, except when maybe healthcare people came, or he went to dialysis. Then he was out of that chair. But no, Michael would never provoke Brandon or do anything to Brandon to hurt him.
when this happened, did you ask Brandon, hey, why'd you hit your dad while he's sitting in the chair?
Of course.
And what did he say?
Brandon said Michael told him to.
This unprovoked incident was enough for Melody and Michael to get a restraining order to protect them from Brandon. Melody paid for Brandon to stay in a hotel for 3 weeks. After those 3 weeks, Brandon returned home. Every 90 days or so, Brandon would have another violent incident. He would then go through a calmer period of time. But during his calmer periods, his mother said he portrayed signs of paranoia. For example, he would tape the refrigerator shut to keep people away from his food. He was quiet and monotone. On Christmas Day, 2014, Melody woke up very early to angry, belligerent yelling from Brandon towards his father. Again, afterwards, he seemed to level off. Melody met with Brandon's baseball scout, one of his coaches from the Bowling Green Hot Rods, and other people she trusted, looking for guidance. The manager of the team also saw the changes in Brandon. He was increasingly disrespectful to authority. He also tested positive for marijuana on 3 different occasions. On March 26, 2015, he was officially and fully released from the ball club. Brandon remained living with his parents. He now had no job, very few friends, and a family who was growing more afraid of him every day, a future with little prospects. Just a few days before the murders, Brandon attacked his mother, according to reports from various family members. During the attack, he choked her and pulled scissors out on her. But Melody later told the court she had startled Brandon and that he was just trying to protect himself.
Back in 2015, there was an incident where he choked you, right?
He had both his hands on my neck, yes.
Okay. Did he or did he not choke you?
He had 2 hands on my neck, sir.
I understand that. Did he choke you?
You could call that choking, I guess.
Okay, describe what he did. Other than he had 2 hands on your neck, did he squeeze?
He had 2 hands on my neck, just like this.
Okay, and indicating she had both hands on her neck. Did he squeeze?
I don't recall.
Did you have bruising after?
I think I had a slight bruising, yes.
Okay. So, all right. After that, there was a scissors incident with you and Sean, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And you opened the door and he came towards you and he yelled and pulled out scissors, correct?
No,
Okay.
that's not the sequence of what happened.
Did he pull out scissors first?
No, he jumped out of bed.
Okay, jumped out of bed.
Mm-hmm. Then he grabbed a pair of scissors to protect himself.
Okay. And did he say that he was protecting himself?
His motions to me holding the scissors and me wanting him to get up and get dressed to go see a psychiatrist that day, in my mind, yes, he was protecting himself. He was not about to hurt me.
So him displaying scissors towards you was not at all threatening?
No.
In Sean's version, he said he was so scared that he went and got a golf club for protection. It was after this attack when Melody reached out to her extended family. She asked her brother, Ricky Anderson, and his son Michael for help, as well as her son Sean. They began to form a plan to save Brandon and to keep the family safe from him. Initially, the plan started off with an ill-conceived notion that a few of Brandon's male family members, his brother and cousins, would jump him to sort of beat some sense into him. According to Brandon's cousin, this was actually Melody's idea. He was against it. Fortunately, before the confrontation could begin, cooler heads prevailed. And instead, one of Brandon's cousins called the Corona City Police Department. Around 6 p.m. on September 15th, Officer Edgardo Sandoval arrived at the Martin family home on Winthrop. The situation was conveyed to the officer by Brandon's family. His cousins and brother were outside in the front yard. Melody had gone out for pizza with a friend. Brandon was inside the home, just waking up. Officer Sandoval interacted with a freshly woken up Brandon and asked that he come outside. Brandon was cooperative and respectful. His family told the police officer about the violence they had been experiencing, including the most recent incident where he had choked and threatened his mother with scissors. Officer Sandoval was left with two choices. The family could press charges and Brandon would be arrested. The second was he could take Brandon to the emergency treatment services in Riverside on a 5150 hold. A 5150 hold is done when an officer believes a mental evaluation of a person is necessary because they could be a harm to themselves or to others. The evaluation can take up to 72 hours. In order to press charges against Brandon, the person who experienced the most recent violence would have to place a report, but Melody wasn't at the home. Her absence meant that Officer Sandoval was unable to see the bruises Brandon had left on her neck. Because of this, and Brandon's cooperative demeanor that day, Officer Sandoval made a decision to place Brandon on a 5150 hold.
Were they upset that that Mr. Martin was placed under a 5150 hold?
Yes.
And did you give them the option as to whether he could be arrested or placed in a 5150 hold?
Yes, I told them that I didn't feel comfortable leaving him there, so the only other option would be criminal prosecution, but based on the behavior, he's being placed on the hold.
Okay. And so between those two options, they picked I don't know if it was they that picked the 5150 hold or you or what?
It was my decision. The family didn't feel it was necessary.
Some of the family, specifically Brandon's cousin, Michael Anderson, disagreed with this decision. Michael was the one who had initially called the police. He wanted Brandon to be arrested.
Did you feel that Brandon was a threat?
Yes, sir.
Did you feel that he was a danger?
Yes, sir.
Did anybody from Brandon's family object to him being detained under a 5150?
Myself, and I believe my aunt did as well.
Your aunt, Melody?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And did that have anything to do with his baseball career?
Yes, sir.
Explain that.
So my aunt didn't want something to show up on his baseball record.
Abstain.
Okay. Were you objecting for the same reasons?
No, sir.
Okay. Why were you objecting?
Because I felt he needed to go to jail to keep him away from the family.
Michael argued with the officer, said Brandon was a danger to others, and that he was afraid he would kill someone. But a 5150 hold was the officer's final decision. After Brandon was removed from the home, the Martin family believed he would be held for a minimum of 72 hours. That time frame gave them 3 days to install an alarm system and to change the locks to protect themselves from their 22-year-old son. It also gave the family time to find a treatment center for him. His cousin Michael and his mother Melody were looking into drug rehab centers during the time Brandon was being held. Michael was specifically looking into options with the Salvation Army, while Melody was looking at facilities across the nation. Their hope was that one of these would be ready before Brandon was released after 72 hours. The state, however, doesn't have to hold the person for the full 72 hours. Those treating the person can choose to release them earlier. And that's what they did in this case. Emergency Treatment Services released Brandon shortly before 10 a.m. on September 17th, just 2 days later. Brandon was given a bus pass and explicit instructions that he was to not go to his parents' home. He did not heed those instructions. At 2:52 p.m., he was seen getting off the bus at the Corona stop. Crime analyst Karen Alexander estimated it would have taken him 53 to 59 minutes to then walk from the bus stop to the Martin family home on Winthrop Drive. The family was made aware of Brandon's release. Melody made plans to have her brother Ricky spend part of the day with her husband Michael and help find Brandon after his release. Melody had also arranged for the security company, ADT, to come out and install an alarm system and change the locks on the house. Her nephew, Michael Anderson, had been in contact with his dad Ricky earlier in the day. He last spoke to him at 4:10 p.m., but afterwards, his father stopped answering his calls.
What was your concern?
That my uncle and my dad's life might have been in danger, that something was going on.
And why would you think that your father's life would be in danger?
Because I know Brandon was just released from the hospital.
While Michael was trying to reach his father, Ricky, the ADT technician, 62-year-old Barry Swanson, arrived at the home. He replaced the locks and began installing the alarm system. Part of the setup involved calling into ADT to bring the alarm online. Barry placed that phone call around 4 p.m. The beginning of the call started in the typical fashion, giving the customer's information, name, account number, address. But the call abruptly ended with a person at the ADT call center saying Barry's name repeatedly.
Barry? Barry? Barry, can you hear me?
Brandon Martin's cousin, Michael Anderson, was the first on the scene. He had driven from Orange to Corona, using the fast pass lane without a pass to arrive sooner. He was fearful that his father and uncle were in danger since Brandon was released from emergency treatment services. He pulled up and noted his father's truck was parked across the street instead of in front of the house. This could have been due to the fact that his uncle, Michael Martin, had occupational therapy for his upper body between 2:30 and 3:40 that afternoon. The therapist may have taken his usual parking spot, but it still gave Michael Anderson an uneasy feeling. This is what he told the jury about arriving at his aunt and uncle's home.
I think I was comforted to know that it was unlocked. I opened the door and I saw a body towards the end of the house, towards the end of the walkway.
Did you actually go up to the body?
No, sir.
Could you tell who it was from where you were standing?
He looked black. That's why I thought he was my Uncle Michael. It was hard to tell, but I believe it was my Uncle Michael's body there.
Michael Anderson waited outside the home for the Corona City Police Department to arrive. Sergeant Paul Gamache was the first on the scene. The door was open, and as soon as he entered the home, he saw a body.
When you looked at that person, what could you tell?
That he was laying on the ground and there was blood pooling around him.
This victim was later identified as Brandon's uncle, Michael Anderson's dad, 58-year-old Ricky Anderson. According to Sergeant Gamache, Ricky was removed from the scene by EMTs to seek treatment for his injuries. He would succumb to those injuries 2 days later. Sergeant Gamache was accompanied by 2 other officers while entering the home. Their job was to access the scene and to clear it for any potential dangers. While continuing on through the house, Sergeant Gamache encountered the next victim behind the kitchen table.
And what did you see when you looked to the right of Mr. Anderson into the kitchen area?
On the far side of the table, and I'll point to it right over here. In this area here, I saw another person up against the kitchen cabinets, which are there, and the kind of facing north, the same way this victim or first victim was, head north, feet south.
When you saw him, were there any clues as to who he might be or what he was doing there?
He had some type of a uniform shirt on, and it was purple with some kind of white striping on it. Looked like something you'd see on a car dealership worker or something like that. So it looked like a uniform, and he had tan khaki pants on, which also looked similar to a uniform.
This victim was 62-year-old Barry Swanson, the ADT technician. Sergeant Gamache continued to follow the evidence in the house. A blood trail led from the hallway to a pedestrian door to the garage. Propped next to the door was a black baseball bat. Once inside the garage, the last victim was visible.
What did you see?
I saw another individual on the floor with blood around his head.
The last victim was Brandon's father, Michael Martin. While processing the scene, the baseball bat that was sitting next to the door that led to the garage was examined. On the black baseball bat, the name Brandon Martin was printed, as well as Tampa Bay Rays. This was later determined to be the murder weapon. Each victim was killed by blunt force trauma. After the scene was cleared, Sergeant Gamache looked for items that would tell him who the victims were. But there were no wallets or keys on any of the victims. Based on the clipboard and the appearance of a uniform, Sergeant Gamache later called ADT to identify this victim. He learned his name was Barry Swanson. Brandon wasn't inside the home. He had taken Barry's truck and fled before being caught the next morning. After Brandon was apprehended, he was taken to the hospital to be treated for his injuries from that second-story jump and the dog bites. After he was cleared medically, Corona City Police Detective Gail Gottfried went to the Riverside Sheriff's Station to interview Brandon a few days later. The interview was not Detective Gottfried's ideal situation. Usually, she would interview suspects in a room where she could fully record the interaction. But she wasn't at the Corona City Police Department, so she had to settle with what the sheriffs would allow her. Her conversation with Brandon was through a plexiglass divider and through a phone. It made it difficult to hear Brandon and create a rapport, but she did her best.
I'm Gail. I'm a detective with Corona Police Department. Okay? And I'm here and I wanted to talk to you about what happened.
Brandon agreed to talk. He said, yeah, he needed to talk to someone. He told Detective Gottfried that he had been at the murder scene, his parents' house and the place where he had been staying too on the day of the murders. But he said he wasn't the one who did it. He told her he had gone there to pick up some of his things, that he first saw his Uncle Rick on the ground. He then saw another man on the floor next to the pantry. He didn't know who that was. He kept walking and saw his dad's body. Detective Gottfried asked Brandon why he didn't call the police. He told her he was too scared. It looked like all three of them had serious head injuries and were no longer alive. Detective Gottfried asked him if he knew of anyone who would want to harm his family. He said he had no idea. She then began focusing on the details at the scene, specifically a black baseball bat, the murder weapon. He told her when he got to the house, he saw the bat in his room and he picked it up. He said he swung at a few things in the room and then in another room. At one point, he said he moved his dad's body into the garage so he could get himself a Dr. Pepper. He then went through the victims' pockets, taking their cell phones and wallets. Brandon said that afterwards he saw blood on his hands, and so he washed it off with his spit while he drove away in his car. As bizarre of a story as it sounded, Brandon maintained that he didn't know who did it. By the end of the interview, Detective Gottfried told him who she thought was responsible for the murders.
You know what I think, Brendan? I think you were told, you were given an ultimatum. You were told that you either need to leave or you need to go get treatment. And it pissed you off. And you grabbed the bat and you beat those three people. Okay? And maybe your intention was not to kill them. Hold on a second. Maybe your intention was not to kill them. But unfortunately, that's what happened. Okay? That makes the most sense.
She then told him he was being charged with murder.
Okay, well, you're going to be charged with the murders. Yes. Because I think you and I know who did that day. I think it's very clear.
Brandon told her there was no proof that he did it. Brandon's claim of no proof wouldn't be put to the test until 5 years after his arrest. On October 26, 2020, his trial for the murders of Barry Swanson, Ricky Anderson, and Michael Martin would finally begin. The prosecution laid out their case at the very beginning. They told the jury how Brandon had been abandoned by his career, friends, and most recently, his family.
At that point, no, the defendant was abandoned by the Rays, and now he was abandoned by his family. He was once a top prospect, and now he was a man with no prospects.
Brandon's defense attorney, Christian Jensen, had a different strategy. His opening statement was less than 4 minutes. He didn't dispute any of the facts of the crime, but said they would dispute the conclusion.
It will be ultimately up to you to determine what conclusions to make from the evidence presented. And it is imperative that you maintain an open mind throughout the next several days of evidence. There is no question that Brandon Martin had it all in 2011. And then we're here 9 years later. But you're going to see a picture emerge of Brandon Martin, a picture that shows that between 2011 and 2015, his mind was changing. He was decompensating. He was going through things that he could not control, that his family worked very hard to attempt to work with.
He said when Brandon's family called the police and he was placed on a 5150 hold, he was supposed to have been held for 72 hours, but he was released after less than 48, given a bus pass and told not to go home. He asked them to keep an open mind. Brandon's cousin, Michael Anderson, was the first person to testify. Michael outlined the changes his cousin experienced from 2013 to 2015. He also recounted the events on the day Brandon was placed on that 5150 hold. Then he told the court about the day of the murders, how he raced to the home believing his father and uncle were in grave danger. The prosecution also called police officers and crime analysts who worked with the crime scene. They showed evidence that each man was beaten with Brandon's black baseball bat based on paint from the bat in their wounds. Detective Gail Gottfried testified about her interaction with Brandon. Her interview with him was played for the jury. Despite the audio issues, it's clear Brandon was telling a different truth than Detective Gottfried felt the evidence showed. The defense team cross-examined the witnesses. They pointed out that there was no physical evidence on Brandon. When speaking with Michael Anderson, Brandon's attorney confirmed that up until the hours before the murder, his family hadn't abandoned Brandon. In fact, they were still trying to get him help. When closing arguments were made, the prosecution added details from the testimonies to bolster their original narrative they gave the jury.
What we have there is a man with no prospects, who's angry at the world and turning that anger towards his family, has been told, you have been rejected. And what does he do? What does the defendant do? He does what he wants to do rather than what other people want him to do. He goes straight back to the house. And when he goes back, travels on the bus from the Tyler Mall in Riverside to 6th Street in Corona. And during that time, he's weighing the consequences of his actions that will come later in that day. He was thinking about what that anger, how he will unleash that anger. Because now he is a man with nothing to lose. And a man with nothing to lose is a dangerous person.
He said Brandon had intent to kill, and that before he acted, he considered the consequences. It was deliberate and premeditated.
The defendant considered and decided to kill and then kill. Willful, premeditated, and deliberate. The defendant considered and decided to kill and then he killed.
The defense made a direct argument against the narrative this time. Christian Jensen, like the prosecution, also used the testimony given from the experts and law enforcement. Jensen, however, focused on the lack of direct evidence. There was no testimony of physical evidence tying Brandon Willie Martin directly to the crime.
Question number one, am I convinced beyond a reasonable doubt that Brandon Martin committed these acts? Number one, at the outset, there is no direct evidence that Brandon Martin committed these crimes. There are no witnesses. There is no statement from him saying he did it. Therefore, you must rely on the circumstantial evidence. And in order to do that, you must evaluate the circumstances surrounding these events. So let's do that. Number one, when you look at the circumstances surrounding these events, the first thing that jumps out to you is there is no physical evidence linking Brandon Martin to these crimes. Specifically, the murder weapon, the bat. There is nothing that puts that bat in Brandon Martin's hands on that day in September 2015. There are no fingerprints. There is no DNA. There is nothing linking Brandon Martin to that bat on that day. Second, when Brandon was arrested, his clothing, you can imagine it was processed. And what are they looking for? What would you look for? You don't have to be a forensic scientist. What would you look for after Brandon was arrested? Blood, right? You look to see, is there blood? Because we've all seen these crimes. We're all familiar with head injuries. What do head injuries do? They bleed. And if there's any question about that, the photos of the crime scenes answer that question. There's a significant amount of blood
in that living room, in that kitchen area, and in that garage. Yet miraculously, none of it was on the clothing of Brandon Martin.
He asked what Brandon was supposed to do after he was released from the 5150 hold, that he couldn't help but disobey authority. His family was all he had.
The only thing he had was his family. Why would he destroy the only thing in his life that is stable? Why? There's absolutely no reason for that. When asked by Detective Gottfried what he likes, one of his answers was he likes not being alone. Now, I can hear you, or I hear you thinking, I can see the wheels turning and saying, okay, Jensen, if Brandon Martin didn't do this, who did? I don't know. And more importantly, for the purposes of your job, you don't care.
He told them it's not their job to try to figure out who did it, that a trial comes from a defendant being accused. Then the prosecution must prove it. And they haven't done that, he said. As for the resisting officer charges, he said Brandon had jumped from his second-story window and landed on concrete. Then he stopped moving, and because he didn't comply with officers' demands, they then sent their dog.
Whether he's just laying there, conscious or unconscious, he is awakened by the dog in his crotch. What was the word that Brandon used when he was speaking to Detective Gottfried? The dog bit my private part. Folks, that'll wake you up. And what is the natural human reaction when you do that? Get that pain away.
The jury deliberated for about 4 hours before returning their verdict. Brandon Willie Martin was found guilty on 3 counts of first-degree murder. The jury also decided that the special circumstances standard was found to be true. This meant the state of California could now seek the death penalty. Brandon was also convicted of 1 count each of auto theft, evading arrest, obstructing a peace officer, and injuring a police canine. Both the prosecutors and defense attorneys called witnesses for the penalty phase. Prosecutors told the jury that Brandon was an evil man who killed 3 innocent men and who deserved the death penalty. But Brandon's defense attorney said Brandon was mentally ill, having been diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. He said witnesses would testify that Brandon heard voices and acted bizarrely years before the attack. Brandon's brother Sean took the stand and testified that in December 2012, 3 years before the murders, his mother Melody called him in tears. He was preparing to play football in the Alamo Bowl, and she started crying, saying she was worried about Brandon. "There's something wrong with your brother." Sean flew out from Oregon early the next morning to help his mother, instead of prepping for the Alamo Bowl.
What happened when you arrived?
So when I arrived, my parents were there. My dad was there. My mom, she's very emotional. She asked me to go to the Eagle Glen home and go get my brother out of there and pack his things up and take him home.
And this is a different address than Yorba Belinda. So he had moved to a different home?
Yes, sir.
That's in the city of Corona?
Corona, in a suburban area called Eagle Glen. Yes.
Sean drove over to Brandon's Eagle Glen house.
So I got there, and to be honest, I was not in the mood to be messed with. I was very agitated and very angry because in my mind, my brother been under my wing and nothing like this has ever happened. And so my first thought was, it's these other people. They're messing him up. I gotta set things straight.
When you say other people, you mean roommates?
Yes.
So when you arrived, you've never been to that home before, correct?
That was my first time.
When you arrived, is your brother there?
Yes.
Are there other roommates there?
About 3 or so.
And are these people that you know?
Yes.
Describe for us what happens when you arrive at the front door.
Okay. So I arrive at the front door. One of his roommates, I believe it was John, Jonsomers, answered the door. I really didn't say nothing to him. I just walked past him because if I did, I might have flashed. And so I went upstairs to my brother's room, which was the master bedroom. And I don't know if he was in there or in the loft right next to it where they had a TV and a couch. But I walked into his bedroom, and this is the first time ever in life I felt something like this, so deep in my bones, just all through my body, where it just felt like pressure just everywhere in that room. And in there was literally just a mattress, a piano keyboard, and a microphone. And so it felt really heavy in there.
You almost had the room had a presence to it?
I felt like something, yes.
And you felt something come over you. Did that scare you, or?
100%, yes.
Okay. Why?
Because, like I said, it's something I've never felt before. And knowing that my brother lived there, it made things even more serious because this is the environment that he was living in.
You know it wasn't good.
100%.
Sean told Brandon to pack up his things that they're leaving. He said Brandon looked horrible, tired, and didn't resist him. They started putting Brandon's things into Sean's car and drove back to their parents' home in Corona, when Brandon said something strange.
As you're packing up your brother's things and putting them in the car, are you having a conversation with him?
Yeah, I was trying to figure out what was going on. That was the first time I really had alone time with him. And I just straight up asked him, what's the deal? And I remember we took on the freeway off Cahalico Road onto the 15, got off on Magnolia. And right before we were getting off, he just looked at me. He's like, Sean, don't you hear them? And I was like, who? And he was like, our family. He was like, they're talking to us right now. And I was just like, Brandon, I don't hear nothing. What are you talking about? And he was just like, Sean, they're talking so clearly. Mom, dad, grandma, grandpa. And at this time, our grandparents are dead. And so I knew at that moment it wasn't good at all.
Brandon seemed surprised that Sean couldn't hear what he was hearing. When they got home, Sean told their parents what had happened. Unlike Sean, he said they didn't seem to be surprised. In January, Melody made Brandon an appointment with Dr. Vasilka Velcru in Riverside. Dr. Velcru made several notes about Brandon's behavior, recalling during the first meeting he wore sunglasses despite being inside. After speaking with Brandon and his mother, she was able to diagnose him.
Yes, I did, and the diagnosis was schizophrenia paranoid type.
Okay, but let's slow that down. Your diagnosis was schizophrenia, paranoia.
Paranoid type of schizophrenia.
Paranoid type, okay. Explain to the jury, what does that mean?
Schizophrenia is a major mental illness and has different forms. And the paranoid type means that paranoia is prevalent. Paranoia means that the patient is suspicious, guarded, not trustful of people, watching his back, accusing people right and left that they are plotting against him, trying to hurt him, poison him. That means paranoia.
Dr. Velcru prescribed 5 milligrams of a medication called Abilify. She testified that she thought it would help to regulate his moods and outbursts he was having towards his family. The medicine is an antipsychotic, which helps with hallucinations and disorganized thinking. After the witnesses were presented by both the prosecution and the defense, the jury then had to decide what the appropriate sentence was for the now 27-year-old Brandon. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. With the sentence handed down, family members were allowed to give impact statements. Barry Swanson's family went first. His son expressed his love for his father and his contempt for Brandon Martin. Barry's daughter talked about how he was a loving father and grandfather. She said he wasn't just her dad. He was an amazing friend to many. He was an adored papi to 5 beautiful grandbabies, and has since had 2 more that he never got to meet. When something that horrific happens, it destroys you, she said. Ricky Anderson's son, Michael, the first witness called during the trial, gave the final impact statement to the court. He said he will always speak the truth in honor of the 3 men who were killed. He said Brandon has always been Mama's little boy, and he said his mom is still protecting him.
Even with all the evidence of drugs, alcohol, violence, Mommy is still protecting her little baby. We know about the amounts of cocaine that Brandon bought for his party home in Yorba Linda, the same home that he destroyed with his raging parties. In fact, Melody asked my dad to help her clean up the house, repair broken toilets, smashed mirrors, and other damages to the rental home. The side yard was full of broken bottles, beer cans, broken items from the house, and other trash. My father helped with this and anything else Melody asked of him. He was a loyal brother.
He said Brandon was into heroin, would yell at cops as they drove down the street, and used racial slurs towards people with darker skin. He said Brandon wasn't happy being told what to do and was treated like a baby. He recounted how when the police came, Melody didn't want Brandon arrested.
My Uncle Michael was elderly, disabled, and being abused and attacked by Brandon. Melody was not happy with the police being called because, as she said, it would ruin Brandon's baseball career. I then told Melody that Brandon was going to kill someone. I could see it in his eyes. I told her to protect Uncle Michael and to get an alarm system. The next day, Melody called me and said that she found a flyer for ADT alarm and camera installation. She said that it was a sign that she needed to do it and that she doesn't want Brandon back because of his violent behavior and his drug use. Melody never mentioned to me or the family about schizophrenia. I know that if her little baby had been diagnosed with something, that she would tell the family so we could get him help. Instead, she wanted us to teach him a lesson by beating him up and put Brandon in a drug rehab with anger counseling.
He didn't hold back as he placed blame on Brandon's mom.
A few days after the murder, Melody sent me a text message telling me not to answer any more questions from the police or the district attorney's investigators. Then a day or two after that, Melody and I were at my dad's house. She again told me not to help the police or district attorney. I asked her why. Her response was because she didn't want her little baby being a victim of the system. All of this could have and should have been prevented.
He said everyone has been lied to.
3 families in the court have been lied to. The jury that had to make the biggest decision of their lives have been lied to. Even though Barry Swanson was a hero, his family has been lied to. Michael Martin's family has been lied to by their own family. Rick Anderson's family has been lied to even after he followed his sister's commands.
Brandon Willie Martin is currently serving his sentence at Wasco State Prison in Wasco, California. But the case isn't quite over. Family members of the victims are currently suing Riverside County for the failure to hold Brandon for the full 72 hours. They believe had Brandon been kept longer at the emergency treatment services, The events of September 17th, 2015 may not have happened. And that's all for this episode. As always, I want to know what you think. This case was kind of a complex one, but not in the typical guilty or not guilty way a lot of my episodes are. The prosecution provided evidence to the jury of the murders, most of which was undisputed. They showed someone who was once the top prospect in baseball losing his career and being kicked out of a home with a family who was now afraid of him. According to the prosecution, Brandon Willie Martin acted out of anger when he killed the 3 men in his family home. Defense attorney Christian Jensen showed a different side of Brandon Willie Martin in the penalty phase testimony than what was presented during the trial. Jensen presented evidence of schizophrenia that was documented since January 2013. Which Brandon is the real Brandon? Do you think the jury was correct with the verdict? How about the sentencing? Let me know by joining the conversation on Instagram @CourtJunkie, by tweeting me @CourtJunkiePod, or by emailing me at podcast@CourtJunkie.com. This episode was researched and written by Polly Katowski with Law and Crime. You can follow her on Twitter and Instagram @Polly Katowski. And be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel at youtube.com/CourtJunkie. Thanks again for listening. Until next time.